Hey y'all, Austin here with Outer World Media. Welcome back to another book review, guys. If you can tell, I am out of the home library. I am out of my office. My wife has decided to go to bed a little bit earlier than usual, which I can't blame her. It's been a downpour of a day. It's been nothing but rain here all day in West Texas. It kind of looks a little bit like some Pacific weather out there, some Seattle, Oregon weather. But it's weird that the weather is like that it's Pacific weather is what it reminds me of, because the book I am talking about has the word Pacific in it, and of course I am talking about the first book in the Dirk Pitt series, and that is Pacific Vortex. Now, to kind of give anybody, if this is the first time seeing my channel, if this is the first video you're watching of mine, welcome. To kind of give you a little bit of a history between me and this series, this obviously being the first book in the series. I had ordered the Clive Cussler Fargo Adventure series just on a whim. The first book sounded really interesting. I ordered the whole series. I got them in. I read the first book. It was okay. It was not my favorite read of the month, but I enjoyed it. I just had an itch that I wanted to get scratched, and it just didn't do it for me. And a couple people had recommended, hey, try the Dirk Pitt series. We think you might enjoy it. So I kind of debated on ordering a couple books from Amazon and giving it a try. I went to my local library sale that we have here once a month in my town. And you know what, they had quite a few of the Dirk Pitt series. So I ended up going, checking it down, ordering before. You know what, I had like 12 or 13 of these books in my cart. Well, they're only 50 cents. So I figured, you know what, I'll get them. If I don't enjoy them, it's not that much money. And I'm happy that I did. I will say that, and so that's kind of the background of how I came to pick up the series. I read the first book; it sounded really interesting to me, and I just picked it up again on a whim. I was gonna try to get it sometime next year, and I'm really happy that I picked it up now and didn't wait. But let's get into it, though, guys. What is Pacific Vortex, the first Dirk Pitt book, about? Well, essentially, this book opens up with this new high tech submarine somewhere out around Hawaii, quite a few hundred miles, I believe, away from Hawaii. But the main location land is taking place in Hawaii. But again, this experimental submarine is out in this area it's called the Pacific Vortex. It's kind of like a Bermuda Triangle type of thing, stuff just goes missing there. There's no rhyme or reason. So, and it is a U.S. military submarine. It's experimental submarine. I know I've already said that, but that is very important to the story. As we follow this crew, we're introduced to the head of the submarine and whatnot, and all this weird stuff just kind of starts happening, and this like weird fog rolls in and whatnot, and from there we're taken to one of the islands in Hawaii where Dirk Pitt is kind of sitting around on this island. It's like the middle of the week, he's just sitting there getting a suntan and whatnot, and he sees this thing out in the distance in the ocean, so he hops in and swims what no other person really could swim. And that's one thing I will say about this book. This is kind of a man's man, if you will, of a character, which is not bad. It's not, Mr. Cussler doesn't do anything that makes it too hard to believe, but he stretches it just a little bit. But he ends up getting this, and it's a note, and he ends up going to the local naval base where he ends up getting in there, and it comes across, I think it's a corporal. I do apologize. Somebody out there is going to probably get on to me about my, military rankings and how this person is this. But again, he talks to this high up personnel, and this person, everybody's kind of just taken back, like, who are you? And that's where one of the characters goes, this is Dirk Pitt. He is, the son of senator or governor, such and such, kind of goes down this list. And that's how we're introduced to know that he is kind of a big deal. I believe he was part of the Air Force. I know of that. Again, it doesn't delve a whole lot into that in this book about his military career. But again, we're introduced to these other characters and whatnot. And from there, Dirk ends up going back to his hotel where he ends up coming across this woman that we're introduced to, who is going to be important in the story. And from there, She is the daughter of one of the people that he just talked to, and we come to find out, they have had somewhat of a relationship, but it doesn't delve a whole lot into it. We do find out a little bit later on in the story about it. But from there, we're introduced to this other lady who, they're kind of, you could tell things are heating up. They're trying to fight over this guy, and they go off and they end up. But the girl, one of the girls comes back, and Dirk even notices, hey, you kind of have a little bit of a bloody lip. You have this, and she goes, you should see the other girl. And I really enjoyed that aspect because it's not often that you get an author that will write about female characters getting into a physical altercation like that and make both of them seem very tough and make it seem like it's a legitimate fight. And that's kind of what he did here, off screen. She's kind of telling you what she did to this girl and how she busted her nose and all this, but yet she's pretty beaten up herself. And from there, Dirk and this girl are ended up, they are walking on the beach, and from there, something happens. And that's when Dirk realizes, okay, holy crap, I am, you know, I'm getting into something more than what I want here, something like espionage, spy, kind of, assassination type of things. And that's as far as I'm going to delve into the actual story itself. Aside from, Dirk ends up having to step up and find this missing submarine that's gone and whatnot. And kind of going into, some of the things I really enjoyed about this book. Again, Dirk Pitt, on the back here, I'll read this blurb. It says, Dirk Pitt is oceanography's answer to Indiana Jones. I can honestly vouch for that. This feels like a very, Indiana Jones-esque character. He's not a sissy, he's not a wussy. He is somebody that he can hold his own. He gets himself into some situations that he definitely has to figure out how he's going to get out of it. Again, I really enjoyed this character of Dirk Pitt. Again, and the way Mr. Cussler writes, chapters aren't too long, but they're not too short. They're just right, at least in this book. I flew through this book. I really did. I read, and it's, let me check here. It's like a 200 something page book. I read like the first, I think like 150 pages in one day. I mean, I just blew through it. I really, really enjoyed this book. There's fist fighting, there's shootouts, there's, martial arts, there's, like I said, assassination attempts. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in this story. But again, this really does feel like a Indiana Jones type of story, and if every book in the series is like this book, I really see this being one of my favorite series ever. I mean, again, I really, really enjoyed this book so much. I remember in school seeing a couple guys read some Cussler books, and I remember them having like ships on the front. I was like, that's kind of a weird cover. I don't think I'll ever read that. I'm kind of mad at myself for coming up with that idea in my head and ingraining that in my head, because now I'm really wishing I had started the series long ago. Because again, this was such a fun read. If you're somebody, you're looking for a story that it's not too serious, but it's not, gonna poke jokes at itself, I would highly recommend this. Again, this was so fun to read, very entertaining, gripping. As I was reading this, Mr. Cussler, he does, kind of give descriptions of the women in here, but it's not, oh, this is Lisa. No, he goes a little bit into kind of how they look and whatnot, but he doesn't go too deep into it. And you're like, okay, I don't really care to hear about her voluptuous, I'm going to leave it at that. But again, this Dirk Pitt series, I really do see this being something that I read quite often. Again, I have the second book already on my lineup for my TBR for this month, so I'm super excited to get into it. But again, guys, the first Dirk Pitt book, Pacific Vortex. Should you read it? Yes. There is a supernatural aspect to this story that I really enjoyed. Again, because the Pacific Vortex, as they call it, is like a Bermuda Triangle type of situation. So again, I really, really enjoyed this quite a bit. This feels like a Indiana Jones, James Bond character. Somebody that you definitely, can kind of see, you know, and it'd be like, I kind of want to be friends with this guy. Again, Pacific Vortex by Clive Cussler. Pick this book up. This was an amazing read. Again, just really pick this book up. I've debated on what I should give it. I'm really gonna give this a 5.5. Sorry, 4.5 star out of 5. I mean, this was such a great read. Again, 4.5 star out of 5. That's how great of a read this was. But as always, guys, I hope you guys have a good one. Y'all stay safe.